Thank you very much, Elsie, for the great introduction. So as you mentioned, we are the co-founders of BARI, Bureau of Architecture, Research and Environment. So today, I think we're gonna try to give you a little kind of personal background as to the kind of works that we do, as well as in kind of talking about why we are doing this kind of works, and maybe probably in the context of the Korean architecture, and also the kind of cultural engagement that we've been associated with the Korea in terms of exhibitions, installations, and working with the different museums, etc. So let's see. So when we first started thinking about the practice name, this was in 2014, we wondered what to call ourselves: office, practice, studio. But actually the kind of work we wanted to do didn't really belong to any of those terms. So we were thinking of maybe what we are doing is a lot of it is kind of finding a system or navigating through different ways of practicing architecture. So we really like the word bureau because it kind of means, it has dual meaning of, it means like a desk or in French, or it could also be like the bureau, as like the federal kind of office. So I think we wanted to, from the very beginning, we didn't want to be just to work within the architecture, like in the conventional architecture practice. So we'll just show you just a quick overview of all the works we've been doing since 2014. So you can kind of get an idea of the kind of works and scales that we've been working with. So this is actually our first ever project, that kind of a PUV person utility vehicle. This was a 15-meter wide Eurasian pavilion that was for the ACC, Asia Cultural Center, and it opened for 3 years. This is a air-kept pavilion, which is still, it started as a temporary structure, but it's still there after since 2016. These are like various exhibitions that we've been involved with. And as part of this kind of being invited for these biennales, we started making this kind of objects as well. So it started with like a very conceptual drawing or very conceptual kind of name for this machine, which was like an urban robot called the Tubo. And then as we were showing them through different venues, we got more funding. So we were able to make a one-to-one prototype of it. That was using recycled plastic. This one is a kinetic pavilion, kinetic kind of a structure. This is digital book where people could really interact with the contents. So as you're moving along, you're kind of going through the time. So this is responding to the emotion. So it has the camera embedded in the middle. So it captures the face and then tells you whether you're sad or happy and changes the color. So this is like a kinetic facade. Airbnb pavilion, which was actually in use for 6 months during the COVID. And Seoul Biennale, which we curated. So we're just kind of looking at Seoul and making the relation to other cities around the world and how we are kind of facing similar issues in the cities today. This was for the MMCA Korea National Museum of Contemporary Art. So we kind of did a scenography, etc. Yeah. So you can see we've kind of worked with the really various scales and many different contexts as well. So before kind of we show 3 projects from that show reel that I showed you, I think we just want to start how we met. So both Jino and I studied at the AA school in London, and we actually met at the workshop. We were in a different year. So we met at this 6-month workshop. So this was this was the first workshop that actually happened in Hook Park, which is like a big woodlands that the AA school owns. And now they have this kind of AA Make program where you can actually spend the whole year making things. They have an amazing workshop space, and you can actually use the wood that's actually in the woodlands. So it's a great opportunity for students to actually experiment. So we met at the Crossings workshop where, so this was like during the breaks. So between terms, during the holidays, we went to this Hook Park, and they made this 15-meter long bridge. There was like a big valley, which was just, so people couldn't really cross. So the idea was to propose and to build a 15-meter long footbridge that people could actually use. But we were using everything that was found locally. So even for the footings, we didn't want to have any concrete footings that's embedded in the landscape. So we carefully kind of measured like, this kind of landscape and then tried to design on site. So it wasn't really so much about you plan and then construct according to the design. It was we really looked at how, what was already there, the existing conditions, and then tried to find, ways in which we use the foot of the existing trees, the trunks of the existing trees to connect this kind of series of points. And then based on the structure, we built this kind of like wooden frame on top. So this took like 6 months because it was like three weeks, and then we went back for 3 weeks, and then in the summer it was like 6 weeks. So in the long run, it was like about maybe 20 to 30 students who were actually living on the site and then kind of working all together. So this was a really interesting experience for us, and I think it really sets out kind of our interests and the joy that we found working with the things. So this is just to give you an idea. There's Genome like in the back in white, and that's me in blue. This is the kind of environment that we were in. So like we were cooking food together, we were designing, and then etc. So that's next one. So this kind of the times when we were studying at the AA, it was we had a lot of like this. It was a period of digital parametrics. So at school we were learning these digital tools, but then on the other hand, through these kind of workshops, activities, we were actually working without any computers, just working with a different way of working together. So that kind of interface of the physical and digital, and actually there is sometimes like a huge gap between what you do on your computer and what's actually happening in real site. So that was really interesting experience for us, and really set out the kind of interesting ways in which we can explore both rather than choosing one or the other. Yeah. And then in the same way, like this is my graduation project for the AA. So we were using kind of mathematical tools, indexical models, it was called, to create it. So using a program called MathCAD, creating this kind of field and making a digital publication models to design buildings. But then when I went to practice, this is the project that I worked on when I was working in London. It was a project that was in Singapore, but we were based in London and working with the geometry. So even though this in a thesis project maybe lasts 9 months, that in real life, a project of that scale, this was like a huge biodomes in the Marina Bay area in Singapore. This project was a 15-year-long project. So I was working on the cladding team for maybe 2 years, and all I did was just actually changing geometry every day, very, very, very slightly. So even though like we could kind of design everything from start to finish maybe in 1 year in our heads at school, like in practice it just took such a long time. So there was that kind of working with those kind of 2 modes, and kind of using this is another practice that I worked on, where it was using kind of an interactive design studio. Because after working on such a huge project, I wanted to do something that's where I can use my hands. get my hands on it and then actually really see from start to finish in a relatively short time rather than a 15-year-long span. But what, using the kind of a knowledge that I learned from the architecture school. So this is a kind of mock-ups that we did in the studio, and then the kind of this kind of series of prototypes was really the design for actually testing, etc. And then that really was what was on the site. So design and construction kind of go hand in hand together. So this was like a really glory days where there was so much work. And then I think when both of us were working, there was a Lehman Brothers in 2008. And in 2013, when we returned to Korea, the practice that Jinong has worked for is called the Space Group. It was one of the largest and one of the most, I guess, pioneering architecture practice from the time by the founder, Kim Soo-gun, architect. And the company went bankrupt. So this was kind of, kind of really shock for us as well. So a lot of projects, we found our interesting ways of working and practicing. But when something kind of this kind of big event has happened, it really affected not just the architecture profession, but the whole society. So that happened in 2014, when we started thinking about opening up our practice the following year, we were kind of looking at, so this is a kind of a quote that we like using. So this is from the other architect from the CCA, the exhibition and the book, the publication, to find another way of building architecture. We have to be willing to broaden our understanding of what architecture is and what architects can do. So I think our way of working as an architect, we thought there had to be something different from following the traditional route of procuring architecture project, and then we had to be in charge. We wanted to be in charge of what we were doing. So from the concept to design and to construction, we wanted to find really the kind of intertwined way of the seamless way of integrating the design and construction. So these are like the kind of works that we've been doing in 2014. Most of them are kind of in the public domains. So we're working with the lots of biennales, exhibitions, and public art projects. And I think the reason that we were able to do this kind of works since the beginning of our office was the kind of a cultural production that was happening in Korea. In 2014, the Korean Pavilion at the Venice Biennale won the Golden Lion Prize. And then in 2017, there was the first Seoul Biennale of Architecture and Urbanism. And in 2025, we're going to have our first National Museum of Urbanism Architecture. And it's going to be one of the largest architecture collecting institution in the whole world. So it's a huge exhibition space. We collect, we research. So it's going to be a very great anchoring point for Korean architects. And I think hopefully we're trying to build the networks with the other architecture institutions. So that's kind of background as to the context in which that we are operating in Korea, and the kind of our personal history of how we are and why we are doing this kind of works. And today for the lecture, I want to introduce the 3 projects that we've been doing. So adaptable pneumatic structure, that was during the COVID, and then Mediascape for the digital moving images, and then the third one, the kind of self-assembling units for the carbon neutral era. So I will talk about the first project, and then Jinong can explain the second and third. So the first one, so this was as I said, it was during the COVID, and because I don't know what it was like in the States, but in Korea, there was not enough wards for the COVID-19 patients to actually, so this was actually a live project. That was actually something that actually had to function that's attached to the hospital that was had the they were kind of specialists in treating the COVID-19 patients. And so this project happened on the car park area that was next to the hospital, which is you can see like there's a huge like on the hospital place. And because they only had the like limited number of the wards, they wanted to create extra ones that's outdoors and that's temporary. And they wanted this was a prototype so that they could get the planning permit. So this was at the start to see if we could get the permit for this kind of hospital wards, because we've never done it before. So even though you can do it temporarily because it's a proper, it's a real hospital, so it had to be monitored, it had to be planned, it had to be checked out by the planning officers to see if this was a fit for the patients to stay for more than 3 weeks. So because we had to make this structure very quickly, and this was the prototype, we had to work with modular structures. So depending on where the hospitals are, they could not have enough space, or it could be different outdoor conditions. So we made this kind of modular beams, and it has 4 wards and 4 stations for the nurses and the medical staff. So this was to house like 4 patients. And this kind of modular structure is like about 1 meter wide beam that spans about so this spans 15 meters and then 30 meters long. But because this is all modular, you could actually add more to make it bigger, or you can make it shorter. But this was like kind of the very basic unit. And the way we did it was to make these pneumatic beams in the middle, and then we had 3 layers. So 1 layer was the outer layer because it was built during the winter, and then we had an inner layer, so it really captures the air in between. So we were worried it's going to be too cold for patients to actually stay here 24/7, for 3 weeks. It's quite a long time. And the climate control was really important. So, and the issue of insulation was also quite a big issue. And also because it happened during the winter, we have a very heavy snow in Korea. So these kind of beam idea, we also applied it to the top here. So rather than making this kind of very steep angle for the case of snows, so because there is only heavy snow only very once in a while. So rather than making the structure too big, we insert this extra beam. So when there was a snow, this could actually pop up, and then it could melt, and we could put heat into it, so it would melt the snow. So that's the one. And the other thing that we tried to do was trying to create the windows. So usually these kind of pneumatic structures are very enclosed. So there's no interaction with the outside world. But because the people were actually staying here for 3 weeks, we didn't want them to feel really isolated. So these kind of the rear windows, and on either side making transparent, so there's enough light that actually comes in, while providing a good environment for them to stay. So this also shows you like how long. So in the end, it only took 20 minutes to inflate the structure. We had a construction day of 2 days, and once all the structures were ready, all the mechanics, etc., but then it only takes 20 minutes, and then 2 days for the installation of the floor, all the M&Es. There's yeah. So this is what it looked like inside. So after that pneumatic kind of air structure, we also wanted to capture that kind of a memory of what happened, because the hospital was temporarily there for 6 months. So after the 6 months, we were invited to have a solo show in a gallery, where that kind of work really inspired the galleries to invite us to actually to tell us about the story behind this airbeam pavilion. So I mean, just a series of videos and the photos, etc. And we wanted to make some sort of a, because the air beam pavilion structure was too big as in terms of scale. So, and the scale was also quite small. We made this kind of an air inflatable bench. This one is actually kind of a cushion unit that we had designed earlier, but it was never used as a furniture. So we made this kind of a cushion-like unit and then made into this air beam furniture. So, but the inspiration was behind that kind of air beam pavilion we did. But then after its use, after it expired in terms of its function, we wanted to kind of continue that kind of way of working with the inflatable structure, but in a different format. And that unit was actually from another project that we also did for the Daegu Cultural Center. This one was used, it was like a disaster, it had a theme of disasters. So in case of earthquakes, the most important thing is to protect your head. But people don't really think about it once, because we think we're all very safe. But then when an earthquake happens, you need like any objects around you and just put it on your head. And so we made this kind of a cushion that could actually work as a bag or as a cushion, as a laptop case, that could just be lying around in everyday life. But in case of an earthquake, you could use it as a head. And then in those kind of earthquake situations where you won't be able to get any furniture or any sort of a enclosed space, the 48 hours is really critical. So before so these were kind of like our concept of how we could actually use it every day. And once this is used after the earthquake, we could actually make it into clothes, or we could actually make it into like make it a sofa. We could actually make it into a private shelters. So this kind of a small unit actually make a 7-meter wide a dome once maybe 150 of them are combined together. So in those 48 hours, when you can't get any supplies, if everyone had this kind of air cap, you could combine them together to make a furniture, to make a community. So that was the idea behind it. So, and then we did a series of workshops with the children, kind of practicing what this all means. And then this was also part of the solo show that we had. We made this kind of pneumatic structure where rather than just kind of using it as a memory of what has happened and trying to put some kind of life into it. So
yeah. I'll take up the presentations. This is the exhibition. We participate as a exhibition designer as well as an artist. So after COVID, the institutions like the museums and gallery had large discussions about what means by having exhibition in offline. And then they try to approach or access or open the door to the audience through online. So they like a subscription, like Netflix. So this is the kind of international touring exhibition. Start from Seoul, MMC, and then Sharjah and Akrets in Sweden. So the title of the exhibition is called Watch and Chill, so streaming senses. And then it's like to feel the kind of practicality you can find in digital world and actually affect how you feel, even though it's not real in physical sense. So these kind of the new senses we are getting in after COVID, like air, we somehow start, questioning ourselves whether any, infectious disease in the air which we cannot see. But thinking that way, treat the data is everywhere, but we cannot really see. So kind of the thinking about the data can be a link up with the concept of air. So we're trying to translate the data in media scale into the installations. So we came up with the idea of having multiple function. So originally it was as kind of sound generator. So you can hear the sound when you watch videos from artists. But at the same time, it functions as a furniture, so you can sit on it. So those are the kind of the body interface during the exhibition, how people actually interact. So from here, like the girl is watching is like it's a QT, and then someone is listening the sound, and then kind of lying back, and also like the kids loved it to touching it. So this kind of the how you interact with such kind of a malleable and flexible structure which capturing the air, and also like give you a comfort in different way. Because I mean, everyone has a different body shape, but it actually, the form can be adjustable for your physical body. So this is a quick overview of the exhibition. So we try to make a design which is not fixed, yet it can be changed, the shape and formation by its user. So always the need from the user can be changed according to user's mind. So it's a kind of undefined, the final form is triggering us. That kind of sometimes we can say that we try to democratize the design authorship, but we design something together with its user. I'll try to explain it later. Further. Anyway, the exhibition has 4 themes like optical tactilities and the calibrated projections and trans-cross move and visible spirit. And like I said, this kind of one single unit for air cell, it acts as like a sound generator. But at the same time, it acts as like a single chair and multiple chair, and then LED light, and also like installation in the whole. So it's like a kind of topography of the digital world, which can be visible. So normal people think there is no boundaries or no borders in digital world, but when you think about it, trying to access a certain website, you deny it. There's borders in digital world, obviously, and also like there's a space you need to be stored, like data center. So in a sense, even though we cannot see easily, but there's always the invisibility has a kind of a physical presence, something we have to bring up, like air. And also at that time, it is very important to recycle and not making walls in the exhibitions. This kind of circular design is a really hot topic nowadays. So every single this furniture actually left over of the exhibition space, which is lots of the soundproof features. So those are the kind of waste we got from the contractors, and then we didn't know what to do at the very beginning. Yeah, this is the actually sponsoring soundproof on the wall, and then those figures actually left over from CNC cutting, and then it actually built up as a kind of the furniture. So it was very interesting experience for us, not having any single wall and not single any waste. And then I think since then the MMCA tried to push that approach a bit further. And like I said, this as a touring experience, it has to be very compact, to travel to outside the world. And this is the image from Access. They actually used one of their program. And luckily enough, people really enjoyed, because right after COVID, everyone is coming to the museum and enjoying the kind of the moment, like back to the normal. And museum decided to make a product to sell it, to make up money out of it. So this is the bag, which is the kind of another we started on engaged by online. But it's really good for kind of your laptops and then any fragile object. And also, when you design things with the air, it's really hard to really in digital. With the and what we actually did is after finishing of the exhibition, we 3D scan actually bring back to in a sense like this time to explore not like what we like when you do with a lot of videos, and then you probably can contribute other digital bit. Yeah. So the next project I wanna introduce is our latest project in Hyundai Motor Studio. We got this project commissioned by Hyundai Motors, and I don't know how many people knows about Hyundai Motor Studio, which is not only in Korea. They have many places around the world, like in Jakarta and Moscow, and I think they're building another place in US as well. So it's like a flagship store in a sense, like many years, like early 20, that like products and all shopping brands start to build up flagship store, which you don't necessarily go to buy things, but getting experience of what they are standing for. So this is kind of branding selling store. So they don't need, if you go there, you don't see any cars, but they want to kind of provide what would be future like when the mobility comes in daily use. So this is very interesting commission as an architect. But normally you get commission from institutions, you're getting commission from motor company. So you have to do something about the cars. So what we proposed and then and try to communicate with the audience is that what if the robot can fly, or they're small enough or big enough to assemble by themselves as like a smart brick, and what would it be like? So this is called Airy. The robot contains the energy. So when you see the top, this is a solar panel, so you can actually harvest the electricity. And also this is the air cushions. It can pop up and they make air cushions for night when it's cold. So like during the day, when sun's out, you're getting the energies for you need, and at night, the top unit goes in, and then this insulation comes out. So we actually made two installation, one for let's say suitable shelter for natural environment, which normally you can easily access. Because this is the inhabiting area. So those are the small units actually made like dome shape. And then we imagine like those kind of whole, space can be expanded and then shrink according to inhabitants, whether it's small or tall. So what it does is that maybe in the future, when you want to
Trap reported ahead.
go out for camping, probably this area can actually make space for you. So nowadays, when you want to go, you just make a reservation through any apps to find the place. But maybe future you don't need to find a hotel or accommodation. It comes with you. So I'm not selling this product. Just thinking about what can you do. I mean, what I'm trying to say is that as an architect, we get used to make a project as a problem solver. But what I'm trying to say here is that what can you do out of this instead of answering or finding the optimal answers. So questioning ourselves is the kind of our driving force in every single project. And then from the very beginning, you don't know where it will lead to. And then this air balloons, we envision as probably suitable for urban condition where not so many public spaces. So actually, this is actually like, and then we thought, what would be like a public space in the future? There's no enough space. Then each area can be hidden normally, and then it appeared when it needed. So imagine like during the day, only people comes out is when they go out to smoke or have a rest. But the rest of the time is empty. It just occupies space. And whenever we have a project, we try to make a name for each thing so that people actually have a empathy, even though it is not actually, living things. I think it is very important nowadays that we start to kind of lose the sense of the relationship with space. We don't call space a certain name, or which is we are missing from our history. So we used to have a monument which can make a relationship between you and space and then building. But since we lose the language, everything is whitewashed and glass washed. There's no need to call some. So this is kind of the approach we're trying to do, to make a space with things, and then you can make connections and then try to communicate. This is the giant, the large scale solar panel, opposed to the previous areas of small unit. So this is how we imagine during the daytime it can actually pops up when it needed, and the people use it for whenever they need it. And then we saw like how they actually grow, like in that sense, in this context, because in natural tree you need the light and then rains and waters and the kind of natural environment, but those kind of artificial nature would be need your attention. This kind of interactivity generate the need to be big or larger or can be changed. So this kind of the interaction is the another source of the living thing. And then it can be different, but up to now, like this interactivity is the crucial part for our practice. So this is kind of rough history of the shelter in civil society we saw. Started from a found space in nature to escape from this condition. We start build up this permanent and temporary and adaptabilities and mobiles. But these kind of changing needs of society also require different types in the future. And then probably critical point for the next in shelter would be electricity, which can make such difference. And nowadays you need electricity to open your app or connect to your friend wherever you go. And you always find the power cable, right, to charge it. So it is very hard to not thinking about where you get electricity when you go out. And then I was curious that to understand, we are not the first one to think about that way in architecture. And then try to look back and would be relevant for our thinking is that the Godfrey Jemper actually introduced the 4 elements in architecture: a roof, enclosure, and mount, a house. And then you can easily link the contemporary architect who might be interested in someone in roof or enclosures, or for us, maybe like a house where you make a fire would be kind of the central pivot point to make a project, because it actually bring people together and also make this certain community around it. And the form itself is, a formulate in order to keep the fire keep going, right? So this kind of the thinking also probably, influenced home is not a house. So, like home is not a house, which means the form itself could be anything. But the more important thing is how you actually make space through these communicatives device or mechanical devices which actually make space and home. So this is kind of the first question we actually wanted to ask ourselves. Can we envision a shelter which harvests energy and has adaptability for the environmental conditions? Like Airbnb Pavilion, we are pretty much interested in not fixed form, but actually the form can change according to site conditions and then users' need. So in a sense, like a form become formation. And also, as a living thing, it has to travel, right? And then see what other conditions can actually affect its use. So we just now developing idea to make it a bit smarter. And then hopefully in few years time, when you have a touring another exhibition, the area can grow in different sense. So I guess when you think about exhibition, it's like you go to the museum and go to gallery and then just see. But for us, the showing certain idea in outdoor space or indoor space doesn't really matter. Because even though the exhibition official day is finished, you can actually bring out and then test out and look for another opportunities to actually develop it. So that's kind of the attitude we have. We're not just sit down on the desk and then wait for client comes in. We just go out and then find opportunities and trying to make a dialogue between other people who might be interested and then make it together. So these kind of the things I want to address with you guys. Architecture has the potential to do more than resolve a given set of problems. It can establish what requires attention today. So, we at the very early on, Uni was complaining and saying that, oh, this is so slow. 15 years, I can't, stay any longer, right? But that's not the, only way to, do architecture. You can go out and then talk to people and then see what you think and then, and propose what would be future like and then what the kind of current, issues we have to, communicate. I think this is, I said too much, and then last image of the our promise. Thank you so much for your time.
Okay, so thank you very much for the great presentation. I don't know if some of you know, but I've been working with RA on another collaborative research project called Tiki Taka, and some of the results are coming out as publications. And but it was really good to see some of their new recent work today. And I would like to just thank you again for the great presentation. So we're gonna have a little bit of time for some questions and answers from them. And I'm gonna start with some of the questions. So if you guys, I'm sure you have some questions. If you have some questions, if you can think about them and be ready for that, that'll be fantastic. So my first question is related to this quote that you had from the other architect. Find another way of building architecture. We have to be willing to broaden our understanding of what architecture is and what architects can do, which I totally agree with you. And I just wanted to kind of hear a little bit more about that when you started in 2006, or when you met together, and then what the definition of architecture or what architects was then, and how it may have evolved over time, and what the main difference is for you now practicing. And I think you started to answer that question at the end of some of the slides that you had, but if you can kind of reflect on where you started from in terms of the definition of architecture and what architects can do and the potential of a designer, and to what you are now doing, I think that'd be, great.
When we first started, we
You wanna come on next year?
Yeah,
We want to
sure,
be in the
yeah.
camera.
We are shy. On that
Yeah.
side.
So now we are in our 9th year since the setup of the practice. And when we first started, we got many proposals to build something. And kind of we made a promise to ourselves that we're not going to build for the first 10 years. So that for the first 10 years, we wanted to really consolidate and experiment with what we want to do, because we didn't know at the beginning. Like you don't know, you don't have like a big manifesto and then big agendas you want to tackle. You kind of wanted to really explore, take time to really think about what you've learned and what the society needs and what you can do. So a lot of the questions need to be kind of explored through different ways. And I think so now we have 1 more year to kind of finalize, or to kind of really kind of put together all our explorations and really kind of ask the questions back to like what it means. But I think we were trying to make a point that architecture doesn't necessarily equal to building. And I think that's the kind of a Korean context that we are working with. A lot of times people often think of architects as actually those who are providing services, building architecture, or building buildings. And we didn't want to kind of we were just kind of trying to make a point that it doesn't have to be. We really want to broaden people's understanding of what architecture is, and it doesn't necessarily have to kind of be in that kind of small realm. We really wanted our education really broadened our understanding of our world and where we live, and we had to make that kind of in a way, like we had to respond to what's happening around us. And I think that kind of just the building way, building buildings, it didn't really enable us to answer those questions to what's happening around us. So these kind of series of explorations really helped us deal with lots of issues, the digital, thinking about temporality, thinking about kind of if we can actually use air as some sort of structural format that could be actually used in case of emergencies. So we had like many amazing projects actually, and we weren't just working with the kind of architectural built environment. We're working with the designers, we're working with the galleries, we're working with the the government, we're working with the whole like the car company. So we just worked with a very range of people, really broadened the potential of what architects today can do. And I think after next year, and then once our publication comes out, we are now ready to move on to the next scale, which will be like building like small scale, probably not necessarily objects, but actually like a proper space that will last. That's our kind of next stage. Do you want to add anything?
Yeah, I mean, just to simply say that, as an architect, a building is one of the many medium to discuss or tell your story. And I wanna somehow to be a citizen before as an architect. Because being professional, you push more, you create a gap, distances from the society. That's how we felt after having many years of experience from the architecture office. You never go to site when you design it. When your building is in Dubai, in Russia, you just search in Google Map and make it happen. And actually, they execute in local companies. And by having this kind of unreal situations with a high-profile project, you feel some weirdness. It's not right. It's not healthy. And then you're trying to make a story, to make it sexier, to sell your design to client, to get more budget, to get it on. But the people in the site and local people wouldn't need that money to get it on.
But I think that's quite viable in that sense,
Okay.
but I think that wasn't the path that we wanted to go to.
Yeah.
We've tried it, we worked in big companies, small companies, but actually we can't work in that kind of traditional format anymore. You know, we have to be more reactive to what's happening, and we have to be proactive in terms of searching our clients and finding our projects and getting funding and, you know, getting exposed to it. We require the different sets of skills than just the, you know, the traditional way of architecture projects. And I think that's kind of the things that we've been trying to do.
So, yeah, truly.
Sure. I think we all have a lot of questions. I mean, first of all, you know, thank you for your wonderful presentation. I really enjoyed it in many levels. You know, we can try to pin this discussion in one area of, let's say, what architects are or cannot be. But in reality, I think your presentation touched so many levels in so many ways that I think it's really wonderful to be able to experience. And I'm so happy that our students are able to be here to witness this. One of the things that I thought was really interesting is this idea that you were talking about there is always boundaries in the, you know, when you are working with the digital world. But one of the things that I thought was very refreshing about your practice is that there is no boundary of scale. And I saw that you traveled that in a really beautiful way. You know, from this modular condition, you could expand into a huge structure that could serve as a, you know, very critical, let's say, you know, hospital for a moment of crisis. But you can also look at the very microscopic level of, let's say, architecture, right? And so it's almost looking at this tiny cells that make up this, you know, organism of architecture. So for that, I really thought that it was a really beautiful presentation. And I don't know if you want to expand on that. It's more of a comment than a question, but, you know, I don't know if I'm making the incorrect assumption about your work, but
I think that's where we enjoy it. Actually, that's the kind of, I think that's the thing only architects can do. I think that's the kind of argument we try to make. Because if designers, so sometimes we get asked questions, are you a designer? Are you an artist? And then we always say, no, we're architects. And I think the way we can work across many scales is because when we think of something, it's always in the context of the other. When you're designing a building, it's always in the context of what's around. And I think even when you're designing something small or when you're designing something big, it's always you're thinking of the relationships around it. So it's not just an object on its own, but it's actually doing something. It's actually, you know, it has a function, or it has some sort of it's responding to something. Yeah, and I think that kind of and this is what we really enjoy, the kind of scalarity of it. And I think that's what the architects, I think, like in the future, can actually maybe explore further. The kind of expanding, you know, in terms of thinking in terms of numerics, but it's also thinking about how it can actually expand and actually have a bigger impact on the urban structures in the cities. Yeah, and I think that's actually something that we want to explore further, you know, much more in the future. Yeah.
So I think you made a point that as an architect, what you need to be trained is the architectural thinking, rather than develop your skill how to design. certain things. So once you are able to create your own thinking, you can apply to in many scales, whether it's a building and furniture, or even a video making film. Which is kind of the education what we got from school. So I think this is kind of things we want to make a point to our community. Even though we are entering a crisis moment, there is a other way to break through.
So in the end, it's actually not the physical manifestations, but it's actually the thinking, the architectural thinking, and then once that's kind of solid, and we try to and the way to test it, because you can never be sure. So once you have an idea or thinking, you have to kind of see whether it works at this micro scale, whether it works at medium scale, whether it works at infrastructure scale. I think we are kind of using it as a truth, the kind of multi-scalarity of how our thinking can be applied. Thank you for the question and comment here.
Can we, Ina, you would like to have a question?
Yes. I mean, thank you for sharing your vision and the beautiful work. And I'd say, like, in addition to thinking, which we appreciate, you had like vision, and for the students very useful to hear this. But I appreciated a lot the physicality, the making of it. So I have a very pragmatic question, like because you said like this scale allows you to kind of work on site and be like present in all the kind of local and the kind of materials, and also when you work with inflatables, are you participating yourself in the making of it, like the fabrication of the inflatables? So how is the process you usually undertake for like an installation?
So it's for two scales it's different. So for a product scale, we somehow end up designing a pattern for the cutouts, because we have a very amazing local manufacturer, but they don't design. So we have to. So, like for example, I gave Dongse that bag today, just as a present. So this is the bag we made, but this is actually the template that you saw. It's the air cap. So it's the same template, because it's the template that's really expensive. So once we make the template like 10 years ago, we use it. So once it was a hat, and we just kind of joined it together. So it's actually like that. Yeah. And then so here we designed the distance or the numbers of these kind of, we call it like dots. So that really informs how much air you are going in, and also how much of the kind of depth you want to create. That is, that's also design part. But this actual kind of design is we first make it as paper. So we make we decide what size it is, etc. And then so this is something that we design the template of it, and we design the pattern of it, and we get it through many iterations. Like maybe it probably takes about 3-4 months to get the prototypes. And then once that's done, we can, so we are we have to be involved in the kind of making of it, and we have to choose the materials and then send it to the local manufacturers, because there isn't really anyone that actually does it for you. So and then we have to finalize and then so just through the making, we actually design. That was actually the important thing. But if we go for a bigger scale in terms of space, there's something that we can't do, because you can't. This is like you need to be very intricate, and you need to think about texture. You need to think about the kind of all these details, which are really important, actually making the product really viable. But in terms of like a big scale structure, we often have a very simple structures and very clear set of instructions. And then we can actually find like a contractor rather than manufacturer who can actually do it. So it's a different approach actually for depending on the scale and the kind of the purpose. This function is actually, it needs to have a very long-lasting product. For something bigger, the detail is maybe yeah, sure.
Thank you. Question?
So can we have a question from one of the students? It's really nice to see a lot of students here today. I know everyone is very busy, students, faculty, but it's good to see you here. Any comments, questions from,
Maybe I can ask
Yes.
them.
please go ahead.
Just a curiosity, like in the scale of that building that was created as a temporary hospital in Korea. And it was an emergency, so it had to be done fast. How was that process?
How was the
The process of designing, making it, put it into this
So
space?
it was actually, so we were approached probably in October 2022, and we had to install it by December. So we had to just maybe 3 months from design to construction. And because there was an emergency funding from the government to build within that year. And they had to test it for 6 months before they could apply to different venues.
Right.
Because this was like the outdoors, but the kind of similar structure was used for the indoors as well. So this was a kind of a prototype. So we only had, so first we were actually involved in the project as an outside consultants. So we were actually involved kind of, giving them architectural perspectives on creating this, because this was funded by the project, the funding was got, it was a university, like KAIST is called, is the some sort of industrial design department. So they didn't have the experience of working in architecture scale. So that's why we were brought in, and then in the end, we actually built it. I mean, as in we got the contract to actually build it because there wasn't anyone else we could find within the time. So the design and construction had to happen at the same time. There was no time for testing. There was no time for, getting it kind of checked out. So we were kind of designing and then making a beam prototype, designing a prototype a little bit. So it kind of, it was very fast paced. But I think that's kind of because everyone was working together, we kind of, and then everyone kind of realized the importance of it. So we were able to kind of do it. And then it had to happen it actually installed on the Christmas tree. So that was, but it was fantastic to see it actually making that space within 15-20 minutes. Yeah.
Yeah, I can imagine. How long did it stay?
6 months.
6 months.
Yeah. So it was on the site until June, and then they dismantled. Yeah.
And the dismantling process, then you store it somewhere.
This dismantling process took 3 hours.
But it could be done again with the
Yes,
same material.
yes.
It's something that can happen.
Exactly. Yeah. So that's why we made the outer layers. It's almost like clothes. You have the outer layer, and this outer layer needs to be replaced because it's sensitive to the light, and it's got so it wears out. So, but we can use the pneumatic structure. That's actually where the technology is, and the outer and inner layers can be replaced.
I mean, the crucial aspect of this project was speed of the construction, and also the kind of the volume, how much you can make it packed. Because the government, the Korean government, wanted to promote as a kind of the K brand, so that they actually wanna send it to other part of the world through airplane rather than use shipping. Because when you use shipping, it takes a week or months.
Whereas this can be done in 2-3 days.
Wow.
Yeah.
So that was the kind of the purpose of making it inflatable using air structure. So it was very clear they had to be transported for air.
Yeah. Oh, it's amazing.
Thank you so much for lecture. I have a follow-up to, I guess, those two questions about the medium of air that you both work with. And it's really interesting because air, you're giving form to air by encapsulating it in other materials. And I find it fascinating because, and I guess the question for me is, as you see your practice moving forward, and also jumping scales and even, you know, as we're confronting the climate crisis and, you know, obviously plastics are very malleable and they can capture air very easily. How do you see like that idea of capturing air and giving form to air through alternative different types of materials evolve in the future? I think that's
So
really.
that's exactly the thing that we are doing at the moment. So we have another project, Gwangju Folly. So it's like an urban intervention follies that's actually happening in Gwangju. And for that, we are actually making our own material. So the next version is because it's a polyurethane, you can't recycle it. That's actually, so I mean, it has its uses because it can be used again and again, but it's not necessarily the most sustainable way of building. So for the Gwangju Folly, which is going to open next April, we are working with a local research person to making a biodegradable plastic sheets, but with seaweed in it. So it's the local seaweed extracts that you can use, which makes the biodegradable process much faster. So, and there is already a Korean companies that actually do that. So we are working with the manufacturer, the product person, university and research institute, the three of them, to actually make a new product. Because what's actually used in agriculture now is very thin. Those biodegradable sheets. So for the inflatable to happen, we need to make it thicker. And we need to put in the seaweed. It has a smell, so we have to get rid of them. We need to make a very attractive color. So we are kind of, in the end, we had to make our own new materials in order to use it in a different way, to apply it in a different scale, because it's never been used at an architecture scale, only at agricultural scale. So that kind of process is really helping us really test out this as a next iteration. Yeah. So we've scaled up, and now it's kind of, we are making more sustainable as our next step.
Yeah, that's so fascinating. Because just your comment about how, you know, at the building scale or at the shelter scale, you have to replace material because it's less durable, but then at other scales,
Yeah.
you actually want it to dissolve faster,
Exactly,
right? So I
yeah.
think that's, it's quite fascinating.
So just add on the physical property of the material the air has. It's not so much about the air itself for now. I want to say that by just navigating different disciplines, art, design, agriculture now, is that you can see their technologies, and then somehow you can start to introduce a new way of apply that technologies to architecture, which we don't, happen to be used quite often. So this kind of, navigating different fields is actually give you opportunity to see what's actually there. So every time when I see people, how did you do that? Where did you get it? Well, it's already there, but you have to search for it. And I think that's something like this lecture has to address to students, that technology is not the kind of the future things. Technology is already here, right? It's just you to how to use it.
Hey, do we have any other comment, question from the floor? Yes, at the back, please.
First of all, thank you for this beautiful presentation. It's eye-opening. I think your work is poetic, is ephemeral to the degree it shows some glimpses of the future, because we right now in a kind of very technological moment. I think in our architectural thinking, because of digital revolution, parametrics are all going to the artificial intelligence, and you showing certain way of thinking, of using this technology on the different level. But it raises the question, and that's what comes to the core about the permanence of architecture. And I'm really interested in how you're looking in the future, because those are very, even the shelter address on the certain element of time. So
Yeah.
you thinking your practice growing in this ever evolving temporal thing, or more permanent in the certain that you would like to create the structure which are more permanent?
So I think that kind of a with temporal structure and permanent structure, you have to address it in a different way, obviously. But I think for us, what's really interesting is a life cycle. So if it's a temporary, it has a short cycle. If it's a permanent, it's a long cycle. Even for a permanent structure nowadays, building will last only 25 years, 35 years before it's being demolished. You know, so already the building is not permanent in a way, because the people who live there will it will need to be changed, updated, you know, maybe there will be other kind of factors that actually come into play. So I think more and more, like it's actually it really that kind of exploration with the air has really taught about to think about the, you know, kind of a life cycle of whatever you're making. And you need to incorporate from the design or the planning.
So in this sense, we actually designing time rather than space. So it's like how you, depends on how you see the time scale. It can be ephemeral, it can be permanent. So, like I said, we're kind of, you know, dealing with multiple scales of the physical sense in terms of the size and form. But at the same time, we're trying to play with ourselves, the time. Yeah.
Especially now working with the biodegradable materials, because it usually, I mean, it has a very distinct using the seaweed extracts. So how much you put into it, it changes the life cycle of the material. Usually it can be biodegradable, just you know, what you get from plastic bags, 1 year. But then if you try to make it ours, which is thicker, 3 years. But actually, once you know the time frame, you can actually make it work to last only 3 years. So it's kind of you are designing what sort of life cycle that's suitable or that's more applicable to what you're making.
I mean,
Yeah.
it sounds very weird, but whenever we talk this kind of story, like the article who had an interview with us, and then he titled like thinking about architecture, actually deconstructing before actually get built, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So we're trying to think how it ends from the very early, you know, on.
Yeah.
That's kind of the let's say responsibility as an architect in this you know, environmental crisis we are facing now. We are not just you know, get granted to make happen. We have to be responsible our act, how to end. Because up to now we are so much into how to use. I don't know, I'm making any sense here. Yeah.
So looking at the time, I think we're at the end. So on that note, I think we would like to thank you again for joining us from far away and giving us this wonderful lecture. And before we let you go and thank them, I would like to have Tina just come back up here and talk about our next event next week, so that it's going to be in this space. But after the announcement, we'll thank the presenters.
Yeah, so next week we're gonna have a big event on Thursday, 11:30. It's part of our friends and alumni awards event. So some students will be awarded as well, and it's an event where we have some of the school alumni. The dean will be hosting. It's important for everyone to be there, but we'll also, as part of the event, we're gonna have Skylar Tibbetts from MIT as a guest speaker. So that's our kind of one of the speakers, we're bringing out of state, and it's a very known design researcher. So we hope that will be very informative for all, and these lectures are important for you to learn as part of the education program, and you should take advantage of these opportunities, and also be there to support your classmates if they're awarded and so on. And so, like Thursday, 11:30 at the 11th floor auditorium, the other building, 16 West.
Yes. Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah. I'll stay around. Yeah, I should. I'll set up a meeting for the whole.
It's not so fun.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. But if.
It's just that.
Yeah. I'll go. Just take it in you, man.
아, 그래요? 수혜 따라가세요?
네.
아, 그런데요?
Oh, we need to touch base for the outside of the. We need to like 2 of us.
It was amazing. It was amazing.
Thank you.
We can email each other quite time.
Yeah. They can making it happen so fast.
Sorry, I'm gonna be here on Wednesday. But
Studio here.
Sometimes it's not, it doesn't,